over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, King DG, and also to our colleagues here in the area called Tshwane, as well as our colleagues in Cape Town. Thank you for making this our last press conference briefing on the outcomes of the cabinet that was held last week on the 13th of December. The first issue that we'll be speaking to is the ESCOM issue. On that matter, Cabinet fully supports all efforts meant to ensure electricity supply certainty in our country. In this regard, Cabinet has mandated Public Enterprise Minister Pravin Gordhan to negotiate with the Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Andre de Ruyter, to commence his duties earlier than the set date. As you will know, he was expected to start probably around the 15th of January. So Cabinet felt that because of the many things that we need to do, if it is possible on his side, would like him to start earlier. So that together with his team, he will be able to immediately deal with the concerning issues at ESCOM. You'll know that the concerning issues center around governance, financial management, including the stabilization of the operations of ESCOM, which includes dealing with the huge backlog of maintenance of the aging fleet, of their power stations, and of course the structural defects in Medupi and Kusile power stations. So that's why we would like the new CEO to start as early as possible. But that's the mandate we have given to the minister to negotiate with the new CEO. Of course, also, Cabinet has decided to resuscitate the energy war room. As you will know, there were energy war rooms that were crafted in the past. We have now resuscitated the energy war room. It will be convened by the Deputy President, Didi Mabuza, and it will comprise of the Finance Minister, Tito Mboweni, Minerals and Energy Minister, Gwede Mantashe, and the Minister responsible for public entities, Minister Gordhan. The team, as again it's implied in the war room, the team will deal with any challenges to our energy supply in the country. Of course, we also restate the fact that the renewables will play a key role in our energy supply to complement the efforts of ESCOM. During question time, we might even give more details on this. The second matter that Cabinet spoke to was the South African Airways. The SAA was this past week placed under business rescue, as we all know, which again Cabinet has fully supported the placing under business rescue of the South African Airways. Cabinet is confident that this intervention will assist in repositioning the national airliner into a stronger competitive entity that with time will gain confidence of all South Africans and be able to attract equity partners. Cabinet has welcomed the appointment of the business rescue practitioner, Mr. Les Matterson, from the Matterson Associates. As we all know, Mr. Matterson will work with black partners that will be announced in due course. The SAA will receive an additional 2 billion as already announced in financial assistance from government to contribute towards the radical restructuring of the entity. Also, the existing SAA lenders will provide an additional 2 billion rands. Again, this is information that is already in the public domain, as put there by the minister, by Minister Gordhan. Cabinet is confident that this intervention of putting SAA under business rescue will restore the reputation of the airline and prevent its collapse, which would have had a negative impact on passengers, suppliers, and other partners in the aviation sector. But most importantly, it would have had negative, adverse impact on the workforce of SAA. So that's why we fully welcome this business rescue of SAA. Again, the Cabinet has said that Minister Gordhan should give regular reports to Cabinet on progress as it relates to the business rescue. So indeed, we'll expect Minister Gordhan to give Cabinet regular updates. The third item is on flooding that all of us have experienced in the recent past. Cabinet sends condolences to those who lost their loved ones as a result of the recent floods experienced in various parts of the country. Government is coordinating a multidisciplinary intervention through the National Disaster Management Center to respond to the devastation caused by these floods. Cabinet welcomes the support of various organizations in providing rapid relief efforts. The evacuation of people from buildings and relocation of people who were displaced in community halls and churches displayed once again a true spirit of Ubuntu from South Africans. Cabinet calls on the public to listen to alerts and tips on severe weather conditions. Fast-moving flood water is life-threatening, and drivers and pedestrians are urged to be extremely careful and to completely avoid using routes which have been flooded. Residents who live below the flood line of rivers and dams are warned to be cautious and move to safer areas at the earliest sign of flooding. We again request all of us not to put our lives at risk by swimming in dams and rivers during heavy rains. The fourth item that we speak to is well wishes from Cabinet on this festive season. Cabinet wishes all South Africans a safe and prosperous festive season. As South Africans, we must continue showing Ubuntu to fellow South Africans and our visitors and guests during this period of merriment. Cabinet calls on all South Africans to observe the rules of the road as they make their way to their holiday destination and throughout the festive season. The responsibility to reduce the carnage on the roads lies with every one of us. Responsible behavior on the road includes not drinking and driving. Driving within the speed limits, and of course also being considerate for other road users, including pedestrians. Let us work together to save lives. Hashtag live beyond December and hashtag arrive alive. Government safer festive season operations have already started with the South African Police Service out in full force during this period. Citizens are encouraged to use the My SAPS mobile app, which is the first of its kind on the African continent. The new app allows citizens to interact with law enforcement officials more effectively by providing tip-offs anonymously, finding nearest police stations and facilities, and allowing a victim of crime to send messages instantly during an emergency. Cabinet also appeals to parents and guardians to ensure that children are not left unattended during this time. Cabinet encourages South Africans to take a short left by visiting local attractions and support domestic events. The use of registered tour operators or tourist guides will ensure safety and enhance travel experience. Details of registered tourist guides can be found on the various provincial tourism office websites. The fifth matter we're speaking to is on the National Senior Certificate Examination results. Cabinet would like to thank all teachers, learners, and parents for working with government to ensure the successful conclusion of the 2019 National Senior Certificate Examinations. Results will be announced on the evening of the 7th of January 2020, and matriculants are encouraged to visit the website of the Department of Basic Education, www.education.gov.za, or register via SMS by sending their ID numbers and exam numbers to 35658 to get their results. On cabinet decisions, the first one under these categories is Biofuels Regulatory Framework. Cabinet approved the Biofuels Regulatory Framework, which will give effect to the implementation of the Biofuels Industrial Strategy. Biofuels are internationally recognized as immediate, less carbon-intensive substitute. They blend fuel for conventional minerals fuels so as to reduce air pollutant from the use of transport fuel. The framework provides 5 areas to be regulated, namely, 1, the feedstock protocol. The protocol mitigates the risk of the biofuels program towards food security. Second one, the mandatory blending regulations so as to create certainty of biofuels demand. 3, the cost recovery mechanism for blending of biofuels. 4, the biofuels subsidy mechanisms for biofuels farmer support and biofuels manufacturer support. 5th, and the last one, the selection criteria for biofuels projects requiring a subsidy. The framework document can be accessed through the Department of Energy website. The 7th matter we're speaking to is on the National Security Council, NSC. Cabinet approved the re-establishment of the National Security Council to streamline the coordination of all the security-related work of the country. The Council will be responsible for the approval of the National Security Strategy, the national intelligence priorities of the country, and the national intelligence estimates. The Council will be chaired by the President in his capacity as the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed and Security Forces. Other members of the Council are Deputy President Didi Mabuza, State Security Minister Ms. Ayanda Dlodlo, Defense and Military Veterans Minister Mrs. Nosivuwe Mapisa Ngakula, Home Affairs Minister Aaron Mtswaledi, Police Minister Bheki Cele, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni, and Cooperative and Governance and Traditional Affairs Minister Ms. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. The eighth matter we're speaking to on decisions taken is the white paper on Home Affairs. Cabinet approved the white paper on Home Affairs as well as the high-level strategy and roadmap for repositioning the Department of Home Affairs as a critical enabler for economic development and national security. The white paper is based on a policy foundation for a modernized and digitized government that takes us closer to realizing the objectives of e-government and e-commerce. Again, Cabinet approved the submission of the Madrid Agreement on the international registration of marks to Parliament for ratification. The Madrid Protocol covers the protection of trademarks. Trademarks build brand recognition and competitive advantage in marketing goods and services both locally and internationally. Accession to the Madrid Protocol will enable the advancement of the country's intellectual property, IP policy. It will offer South African businesses, particularly the small businesses, an avenue to use the IP system to market their goods and services internationally. On PRASA, the Passenger Rail Agency of South Africa, Cabinet approved what already has been announced by the Minister, the dissolution of the interim board of PRASA and the placing of the entity under administration. Again, as we explain this dissolution, Cabinet believes that South Africa needs a reliable, economical, and smooth-flowing rail corridor that acts as the backbone of public transport in linking the various modes of transport. The Auditor General's recent outcomes for 2018-2019 reported serious governance failures at PRASA, lack of effective financial management process resulting in PRASA obtaining a disclaimer audit outcome. To this effect, Cabinet also approved the appointment of an administrator, Mr. Bongisizwe Mpondo, to administer the affairs of the entity for 12 months. This intervention will contribute in restoring the effective performance of PRASA, of course. We are mentioning all these matters around PRASA, but of course the Minister has already spoken on these matters, having been mandated by Cabinet to do so. The 11th matter that the Cabinet took a decision on was on broadcasting digital migration. Cabinet was briefed on the status of the broadcasting digital migration program regarding decoder storage, distribution, and installation management. It noted the framework for installation of the decoder stock kept at South African Post Office warehouses. Cabinet approved that for the remaining decoder installations, installer will be appointed at local municipality level. This revised delivery model is meant to fast-track the process towards the migration from analog to digital and the release of the high-demand spectrum. Cabinet also approved the appointment of Mr. Nyoye Nini Vantuli as the Administrator and Accounting Authority of the Universal Service and Access Agency, USSA, of South Africa for 24 months. The 12th matter that the Cabinet took a decision on was on the report on the 25-year review of women's empowerment and gender equality in South Africa, 1994 to 2019. Cabinet approved this report, which will serve as the country's report back to the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, Beijing Plus 25 of the United Nations. The UN Commission on the Status of Women is scheduled to make the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action in March 2020. South Africa is the signatory to the Beijing Declaration. The report highlights progress in a number of areas in respect of women empowerment and attempts to narrow the gap of gender inequality. Whilst it affirms that South Africa has comprehensive gender-responsive legislation and policy interventions to redress sexism, challenges for transforming historical gender imbalances and addressing the persistent patriarchal practices and stereotyping remain. The 13th matter the Cabinet took decision on is on gender-based violence and femicide national strategic plan. Cabinet was briefed on the national strategic plan, which provides a multi-sectoral coherent strategic policy and programming framework to ensure a coordinated gender-based violence national response by government and the country as a whole. Cabinet approved that all funded programs of the plan residing in departments must be implemented by the various affected departments without any delay. Cabinet, however, directed further work be done in refining the proposed institutional and coordination arrangement of the plan. The following ministers were directed to do further work in this regard, which ministers are Social Development Minister, Lindiwe Zulu, Justice and Correctional Services Minister, Ronald Lamula, Police Minister, Mr. Bheki Cele, Women, Youth and Persons with Disability Minister, Maite Nkwana Mashabane, and Minister Nkwana Mashabane will convene this team. The 14th matter that the Cabinet took a decision on is on the recommendations of the Presidential Advisory Panel on Land Reform and Agriculture. As we all know, on the 25th of July 2019, Cabinet received the report of the Presidential Advisory Panel on Land Reform and Agriculture, which was chaired by Dr. Vuyoga Zimahlat, which made 73 recommendations. Through the Interministerial Committee on Land Reform, led by Deputy President Mabuza, all the affected departments were asked to study the recommendations relating to their respective portfolios and respond accordingly. Cabinet has since endorsed and supported 60 of the 73 recommendations from the report. Only 9 were not approved and 3 were noted. The various departments will provide a fuller briefing on the areas that were noted and not approved. Of course, also Cabinet on item 15 took a decision on Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project, referred to as GFIP. Cabinet noted the report on the GFIP, or Gauteng e-tolls, particularly the report as led by the task team, led by Transport Minister Fikile Mbalula. A final decision on the recommendation of the task team on GFIP, as contained in the report, will be made in the new year by Cabinet. In short, whilst the matters were discussed, there was no finality reached by Cabinet. Definitely, Cabinet will reach finality on this matter in its next meeting in the new year. The 16th matter is on the beneficiary selection and land allocation policy. Cabinet approved the publication of the new policy for comment. The policy provides for a credible and transparent process for land allocation and beneficiary selection. Notably, it addresses the gender inequity in land allocation and access, and a lack of mechanisms to enable poor communal residents and villagers to access land in case of natural disasters and other emergency situations. On bills, Cabinet approved the publication of the Victim Support Services Bill of 2019 for public comment. The bill provides for integrated and multidisciplinary intervention approach towards the needs of victims of crime and violence. Through this bill, the activities and services by various departments in the justice, crime prevention, and security cluster and the social cluster will be better coordinated as part of a singular value chain. Cabinet also approved the Social Services Practitioners Bill of 2019 to be gazetted for public comment. The bill was developed to expand the regulation of social services practitioners by recognizing that there are both professional and auxiliary levels within the social services occupations. This bill, once it is legislated, will repeal the current Social Services Professional Act of 1978. The Department of Social Development will, at a later stage, unpack the two proposed bills we have just spoken to. Cabinet approved the submission of the Expropriation Bill of 2019 for public comment. The bill has been enhanced by inputs from the extensive consultation with the public and from different formations. Once passed into law, the bill will provide uniform procedures to be followed when effecting the expropriation. It provides a legal framework for government departments and other organs of state in the three spheres of government to apply uniform land and other infrastructure expropriation procedures. Cabinet approved the publication of the draft Upstream Petroleum Resources Development Bill for public comment. The bill seeks to create an environment that will promote investment into the upstream petroleum sector. It provides guidance on the exploration and production activities that will contribute to economic growth and transformation. The bill also separately provides for the regulation of petroleum resources. It establishes the Petroleum Agency of South Africa, which will make recommendations to the Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. Cabinet approved the publication of the Municipal Fiscal Powers and Functions Amendment Bill for public comment. The bill amends the Municipal Fiscal Powers and Functions Act of 2007. It regulates the powers of municipalities to levy development charges in respect of land development, applications submitted to the municipality. Development charges are one of the instruments that municipalities can use to finance the development of municipal infrastructure. This enables municipalities to execute their role of providing well-maintained and functioning infrastructure services to unlock economic growth. Cabinet approved the submission to Parliament the Auditing Profession Amendment Bill. The bill amends the Auditing Profession Act of 2005. The bill proposes that the Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors be empowered to subpoena any person with any information required to complete an investigation on improper conduct by auditors. The amendment also empowered the Minister of Finance to determine the maximum amount which can be imposed on an auditor with a guilty finding following a disciplinary hearing. On upcoming events, we only have one event, and that event is the Southern African Development Community Media Awards. We call on the South African media, or the South African media are invited to submit their entries for the 2020 SADC Media Awards competition not later than the 28th of February 2020. Thank you very much that all of you are here. Just make your submissions so that as those that will be checking who should get an award, we are not counted out. Journalists who wish to enter the competition can access more information from the GCIS website. On congratulations, Cabinet extends its congratulations to Miss South Africa Zozibini Tunzi for being crowned Miss Universe 2019. Again, Cabinet extends its congratulations to Restaurant Mosaic for being named the highest ranking South African restaurant at the annual La Liste World Restaurant Awards in Paris. We also, Cabinet extended its congratulations to the 4,971 new police officers who graduated last week Friday from our police colleges. The new graduates or police officers will be joining the ranks of the SAPS to improve our safety. Cabinet also congratulated the United Kingdom Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, and his Conservative Party for winning the 2019 UK general elections last week, and looks forward to further strengthening its relations between the two countries during his tenure. Cabinet also congratulated Amajida, our South African under-20 national soccer team, for their valiant game against Zambia and achieving runners-up at the under-20 COSAFA Cup. On appointments, Cabinet approved the appointments to the Human Resource Development Council of South Africa, which will then be chaired by Advocate Richard Sizani. We have all the names, which I won't read. We will give you all the names for your information, but what matters is that Cabinet has indeed approved the appointments to the Human Resource Development Council of South Africa. The other approval that Cabinet did was approving the board of the Road Accident Fund. Again, the Road Accident Fund board will be made public by the relevant minister The last approval that the cabinet did was to approve that Miss Nompumelelo Mpumi Mpofu goes to manage, as managing director, the Airports Company of South Africa. That was the last appointment that the cabinet did in its meeting on Friday. And with that, ends our statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. At this point, I'll take questions. Yes, you'll be the first one.
Hi, Minister. It's Michael Apple from ENCA. 3 questions. The resuscitation of the war room. Our president himself was part of this war room when he was the deputy president. What is different about this war room to previous war rooms if we still found ourselves in this situation? What's the difference? Is it going to somehow be more effective or more efficient? Second question is around the photojournalist Shiraz Mohammed. Can cabinet or government confirm that he is indeed free? And if so, is the government involved in ensuring his safe return to South Africa? Third question is around recent media reports of an organ of state, the State Security Agency, being involved in influencing or verbatim giving statements to what's supposed to be an independent Chapter 9 institution, the Public Protector. Is it of concern to Cabinet that an organ of state is influencing an independent body? Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's Natemba from Jacaranda FM. Just 2 questions on the e-tolls. I don't know if maybe you may have some dates on when the decision will be finalized, and some sort of, if you can expand on why the issues have taken so long to finally reach sort of an agreement or a decision, considering dates to come up with the decision have been moved back and so on. Thank you.
Yes, the back.
Good morning, Minister. Antoinette Slauert from Rapport newspaper. On the renewable energy, was there any call from government or from cabinet to expedite the next round of renewable energy procurement? Or what you recognize the importance of or the role of renewables, but what do you do about that? And then on e-tolls, to add to my colleagues' questions, what will change from this meeting to the next meeting to enable Cabinet to take a final decision, or are you going to postpone the decision once again?
Thank you. Can I take some from Cape Town, Minister, before, or you want to respond to this?
Well, why don't we respond to this, then take
Okay.
Cape Town? Yes.
Thank you.
Well, let's start with report. We fully recognize the importance of renewables. And in this respect, yes, Cabinet said that the 2 ministers, particularly the Minister of Minerals and Energy Resources, should work with IPPs to ensure that indeed IPPs also play a role in stabilizing our electricity supply. Yes, that we can agree to. Of course, you will know that the other matters in relation to the question that you are asking are basically legislated. So whatever it is, whilst we might want to fast track the bringing renewables on our grid, but we should all do so within the ambit of the law. No problem about it. But we recognize that we cannot, as a country, suffer from load shedding when in fact you have independent electricity producers that can assist us in dealing with these matters. Yes, Cabinet did express that view, that let's appreciate that there are new or there are independent power producers who can come to the party, who can come to the grid, but also Cabinet also said it should not only be Eskom that can procure electricity from anybody else. We must make our law to be amenable to other private citizens or even municipalities. By the way, there are municipalities that are now procuring electricity from independent power producers. So indeed, there is a space, quite a critical space and critical role for independent power producers. Cabinet fully agrees with the sentiment of your question. We believe that with time, the ministers of mineral resources and energy will speak to you on the details of this particular item. The e-tolls. The issue is, what mechanisms would you like to use to pay for the upkeep of your e-tolls or your Gauteng Freeways improvement scheme? That was the issue. How would you like, if indeed would you like people to pay, or would you like some other mechanism to be put in place? Now, the Department of Transport has done a lot of work on what are the options available. Now, what we were busy discussing were the most appropriate options. Not only for the Gauteng e-tolls, but generally for our road infrastructure improvement in the country. So as we expanded the mandate of the department to look into all these matters of Gauteng e-tolls, and also how do we use whatever mechanism we will agree on to also improve our road infrastructure throughout the country, in our rural provinces, everywhere else. That's why it has taken some time, because the Department of Transport could not only, at first their mandate was to look, how do we fund the e-tolls in Gauteng? Do we reduce what we are now paying, or do we do something else? But with time, it was then added that, can you also look on how do we improve our road infrastructure everywhere? And what mechanisms of funding should we be looking at? That is what Cabinet will finalize. We can assure you that when Cabinet meets next time in the new year, it will finalize on this issue. We will give South Africa certainty on what are we going to do with the Gauteng e-tolls, but secondly, we'll also give South Africans an idea on how are we going to improve our road infrastructure throughout the country. So we think that us not rushing on this Gauteng Freeway improvement scheme has enabled government to even think beyond Gauteng, to think about Eastern Cape, think about Limpopo, to think about Free State, Northern Cape, road infrastructure. How do we make our road infrastructure to be traversable throughout the length and breadth of our country, not only in Gauteng? So when we come back to you after Cabinet has finalized on this matter, I think you'll also be very proud of the options that Cabinet would have agreed on. Again, when will this be finalized? Definitely. It will be finalized in the next Cabinet. In fact, it's just a few matters that remain. But in the next Cabinet sitting, this GFIP matter and linked to improving our road infrastructure throughout the country, I can put my head on the block that the next cabinet will finalize this matter. The SSA influencing public protector, it never came before cabinet. This matter was never before cabinet. Photojournalist Mohammed, again, is not something that the cabinet has reflected on. I can only speak as a minister responsible for the media, but it's not a government decision. We welcome. We welcome the release of Mohammed. We will check what it has done to ensure that he comes home safe and sound. But indeed, we can only welcome his release. Energy war room, how different will it be? As we have said, there are now various options that are available. You remember that the Minister of Energy and the Mineral Resources also put before the nation optionalities that are there available to South Africa. So based on that, on those optionalities, we think that the war room can then assist us even more now in ensuring energy supply certainty to the country, so that we don't only, when we think about energy supply, we only think about a particular minister. So cabinet felt that let's have a team of ministers led by the deputy president that will be seized with this matter. And again, like we say in our statement, their preoccupation will be how do we ensure electricity supply certainty in South Africa. Of course, the one question was, we have renewables. How do we use renewables as well? But also, in the eventuality of Eskom doing maintenance, as it will do from time to time, to its aging fleet, how do you mitigate against loss of megawatts under those circumstances? One option, use of renewables, but another option is just get some megawatts from somewhere else. So this is what the war room, energy war room, will be looking at, so that at least South Africa will know that whilst we will continue to maintain our fleet, there will be some program of alleviating whatever difficulties that we will encounter on energy loss as we do this maintenance. Secondly, as we deal with the structural defects on our new plants, what then do we also do so that businesses and households do not suffer as we attend to the defects of Medupi and Kusile? So broadly, I won't say what will be the difference between this war room and the other war rooms, because I was not part of any. But all I know from where government sits is that let's have more colleagues assisting the two ministers that are in the energy sector in ensuring that there is energy supply certainty in the country. So that's all that I can say in relation to the rationale for the establishment of the energy war room.
Thank you, Minister. Can I take Cape Town?
Yes, Ms. Pumla, we've got 4, starting with Yanyan.
Yanyan Jabbar from Marula Media. I first have a request or even a command, Minister. Please take your head off the block. We don't want to lose you if anything happens, so that you can't have it at the next cabinet briefing. But then the bills that cabinet have approved are very important bills. When will they be published? Is there any immediate access to them available? I mean, I don't want to ask each of them, but if we can have publication date, that'd be good. And then third, I was surprised to see Cabinet congratulating the Conservative Party as such. To the best of my knowledge, Cabinet does not function on that level, and if so, the party of which most of Cabinet is comprised, to the best of my knowledge, belongs to the Socialist International, which the Labour Party belongs to. And as far as Mrs. de Lille goes, my guess would be the Liberal Democrats. So since when is Cabinet involved in party politics on the right of the spectrum?
Thank you.
Good morning, Jan Gerber, News 24. Minister, can you perhaps elaborate on the reasons for the re-establishment of the National Security Council? And would sabotage at Eskom's borders be something they would look into? Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Is the next one? I think you said 4.
Jan Lange from Report. In follow-up about the previous questions about the electricity crisis, I just want to be clear. Mr. Gerber, Mr. Eskom's chief operating officer, Jan Ober, also says he has a need for about 5,000 megawatts to give him space to do the maintenance that is necessary. Up to now, there are huge industrial companies in South Africa who generate electricity for their own use, who has excess capacity, who are not renewables, but they have also always been offered their excess capacity to help South Africa, to help Eskom. Are they also in the running? Are they also, do they also, is Eskom, is there any legal impediment remaining? Up to now, they weren't allowed to, in order to protect Eskom's monopoly. Is there still any legal impediment preventing them and preventing the grid operators from using that capacity? And secondly, last week's events, the shortage during load shedding is ever increasing. It was last week the biggest ever, and it was a huge leap from the previous. If we don't, Cabinet, government has been trying to stop this, to reverse this trend since 2008 for 11 years, and it's always increasing. If we don't change this trend, we will face a total blackout. Have Cabinet discussed this risk, and what is government's thinking about this?
Morning, Minister. Paul Vicchiato. Morning, Minister. Paul Vicchiato from Bloomberg. Is there any indication when Mr. De Ruyter will actually take up his position? Has the date been set, if it's earlier than January the 15th? Then, secondly, the land reform report. Will that report be made public, and will it indicate the 60 recommendations that Cabinet approved of? Then on the upstream petroleum bill, when will that be published and for public comment, and will that include a free carry, what is called a free carry of around 20%? Thank you.